The Madman! Hey, it's Slay's Cards of BOOMSDAY! Let's review them. Starting with Voltaic Burst. Voltaic Burst is a 1-mana shaman spell. Summon 2 1/1 Sparks with Rush with Overload 1. Initially, this might just look like worse Zap, since Zap does 2 damage to a minion and costs 0 with Overload 1, whereas Voltaic Burst seems to summon 2 1/1s, which basically rush to deal damage immediately to minions. But where Voltaic Burst shines is that you don't have to trade in the minions, so you could get just 2 1/1s for 1, Overload 1 also. That's not very good either. Where it really shines, though, is with Flame Tongue Totem, Voltaic Burst becomes 1 mana Overload 1, deal 6 damage. There are a lot of cards that work well with Voltaic Burst. Direwolf Alpha, the Flame Tongue Totem, Knife Juggler, Sea Giant, Bloodlust, Cult Master is an interesting one. There are lots of options, but where Voltaic Burst might really shine is in concert with Thunderhead. 4 mana 3/5, after you play a card with Overload, summon 2 1/1 Sparks with Rush. And since Voltaic Burst has Overload, it'll trigger Thunderhead and summon 2 more 1/1 Sparks with Rush. This is a really powerful effect because Voltaic Burst is maybe nearly on the cusp of playability, if it isn't already. So getting 2 mana value each time you play a card with Overload is huge. This card compares with Violet Teacher. Thunderhead is also an elemental, so quite a bit of elemental theming potential here. Also is an even cost card, which fits well into even Shaman, since all the cards that are good with Voltaic Burst, Flame Tongue Totem, Direwolf Alpha, Knife Juggler, Sea Giant, potentially Cult Master, those all fit into even Shaman very well. Notably good card with this card though is Zap. You play your Zap on the Thunderhead turn, dealing 4 damage to minions. Wow. So this is a card that really could introduce a type of token Shaman that isn't necessarily just even Shaman, although I imagine even Shaman will be experimenting with this card alongside Zap. Next, it's Power Word Replicate. For Priest, 5 mana spell, choose a friendly minion, summon a 5/5 copy of it. Now the problem with Power Word Replicate is that the friendly minion target generally wants to be something big. That's the minion types you want to copy. And unfortunately, it scales those minions down into a 5/5, so one might wonder why even run this? Why not just run Faceless Manipulator? And that's a good question. Well, Power Word Replicate is better on smaller minions, I suppose. There are some pretty critically utility useful minions that you might want to Power Word Replicate, such as Northshire Cleric, or maybe Radiant Elemental. Radiant Elemental Power Word Replicate does key off of each other because Radiant Elemental makes Power Word Replicate cheaper. But then you have the concern of if you were looking to do that, why not just run Vivid Nightmare, which costs 2 mana lower than Power Word Replicate, if you were trying to go for an OTK. And that's a big puzzle. Currently though, it's hard to find the niche that Power Word Replicate occupies that is not already occupied by either Faceless Manipulator or by Vivid Nightmare. Next up, this is a card that needs a story attached to it, and so I'm going to perform a reading. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors. I wake up in a cold sweat. That sentence haunted me all night, drifting in and out from my dreams. Nocturnal ruminations on the nature of unassisted flight and fancy were frequently interrupted by a whispered notion, a hushed muttering echoing through the canals of my mind. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors. I steady my shaking hands. I fumble towards the bathroom and splash cold water on my face. Bags had developed under my eyes, which were cracked red like a stained glass window. I had to go to work, but all the weight had shifted from my body up to my shoulders. My bones are hollow, the sensation of ants crawling through them are unceasing. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors. I cover my mouth. The words had just spilled out of my mouth. Why? Why? I repeat. I step towards the kitchen and grab a plate. Food. I need food. Something, anything, to get my mind off those strange, cursed words. The fridge creaks open, and the light within flickers, revealing a bowl of fruit. It was said that mangoes were rich in vitamin C, like having a ray of sunshine trapped in a thin green skin. I flop on down on the couch and dig a spoon into the mango, pushing through with the edge of the spade pulling up with the exhaustion of a gravedigger. A flash of purple and green streaks across its flesh. I pause to catch my breath. It's a cheaper sprint, I mutter. That also tutors. I shovel the mangle into my mouth. I couldn't pay attention to the bits of bitter skin that I swallowed in my haste. I couldn't afford to. Like a bolt of lightning, my phone vibrates. I hurriedly pull it out of my pocket. Are you okay? A text message from my sister read. The police called us. They found you passed out in a parking lot. What happened? What happened? I check my clothes. They certainly aren't my pajamas. The hem of my jeans are caked in vomit. I don't know, I reply. I'm fine though. I'd be in the hospital if I weren't. After all, it's a cheaper sprint that tutors. What about Sprint? My sister writes back. You mean the phone provider? I stare at my phone. My thumb had moved on its own. Hastily I write, sorry, autocorrect, and then throw my phone into a corner. My phone vibrates again. It rumbles angrily, like a beast. I reach out towards it. It's just the Reddit app talking about trends. I thought I turned off these notifications. Without pretense, my thumb slips again, moving autonomously. A prison warden with no need to hide from its prisoner. It scrolls through my subreddits and slams on the one based around Hearthstone. Horror grips my chest. Air is choked out of my lungs. An image of a purple and green fruit, undulating within its brown borders, loads on my screen. Juicy Psych Melon. 4 mana. Draw a 7, 8, 9, and 10 cost card. Thunder rumbles. Winds howl. A storm rages, even though the weather outside is perfectly clear. I fall to my knees. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors. As the screams of the storm rises to a deafening crescendo, I raise my voice to yell above the ceaseless pounding in my ears. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors! It's a damn cheaper sprint that tutors! You animals! You buffed it! Damn you! God damn you all to hell! The storm crashes down on my body. I lay there on the floor, twitching, drooling. Once again I wake. My memory is hazy, save for a single phrase unraveling through the scorched remains of my conscience. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors. And that's what brings us to Juicy Psych Melon. It's a cheaper sprint that tutors. My god. In Wild, this fetches the entire combination of Azalina Soul Thief, King Togwaggle, Aviana, and Kun the Forgotten King. It's like the players designed it and we're like, I'm not winning enough yet. Why not print a card that gets all of those cards? My god. And in Standard, this fetches infamous cards such as Hadronox and Master Oakheart. Now, the good news about Master Oakheart is Master Oakheart is currently used in order to famously fetch Dragon Hatcher, which Master Oakheart cannot do if you're drawing Dragon Hatcher with your Juicy Psych Melon, so thank goodness for that. But maybe we'll fetch Master Oakheart with a different cast of characters, especially if there are some sick 2 and 3 cost attack minions in this set. 4 mana draw 2 is already pretty good, especially if it's tutoring from your deck. But just think, if you manage to add a decent 7 cost and 10 cost minion to your deck, whew, that's a lot of fuel. If you play this on turn 6, then, and by turn 6 I mean mana cost 6, because maybe by the turn you have mana cost 6, it's your turn 4, or dare I say it, turn 3. Anyways, Juicy Psych Melon on 6, 7 drop, 8 drop, 9 drop, 10 drop, my mind is reeling. Interesting question about this card though, is it powerful enough that it warrants a 2 of, even though the second copy of Juicy Psych Melon will probably be useless? In a similar fashion to Ultimate Infestation, which is so strong that you play 2 copies of it sometimes, even though you probably don't want to play the second copy. Juicy Psych Melon also does have the weakness that you could draw the 7, 8, 9, and 10 cost minion from your deck, making Juicy Psych Melon weaker. But certainly a 4 mana draw 4 card has to be looked at very carefully, especially as it also tutors. Wow, what a card. Next up we've got a 3 mana 3/4 Beast Augmented Elec. Whenever you shuffle a card into a deck, shuffle in an extra copy. Natural flow and probably the most practical application of this card is to turn 3 Augmented Elec and follow it up with turn 4 Faldora Strider, shuffling in 6 spiders into your deck. Also a natural progression might be Augmented Elec into the Darkness, shuffling in 6 candles into the opponent's deck, making the Darkness awaken quite quickly. Augmented Elec, along with Academic Espionage, immediately shuffles in 20 cards from the opponent's class into your deck, all of which cost 1. Wow. One thing that my value self really wants to do is to play Augmented Elec and then play Elise Trailblazer. And then you shuffle in 2 copies of Ungoro Pack into your deck. That's incredible value. That's a lot of interesting applications on a card that has good stats, 3 mana, 3/4. But I can't help but be reminded of Blackwalled Pixie, which is also a 3 mana, 3/4 from the Witchwood, with what is a useful ability. It seems to kind of be very similar in application. It's a cool card in combination with a few cards, but ultimately Blackwalled Pixie didn't see play. So will Elec see play? Remains to be seen on whether this rogue archetype of shuffling in cards works well. Finally, we have Necrium Blade, a rogue weapon, 3 mana, 3/2, death rattle, trigger the death rattle of a friendly minion. Wow, incredible! This already has the Fire War Axe stats, and on top of that, you're getting a full death rattle worth of value, and there are some cards out there with some incredible value death rattles, such as Mechanical Whelp, the death rattle of which gets you a full 7/7 mech. That's like a 3 mana, 3/2 weapon, which also summons a 7/7 then, which is huge. Mara Rotspring could get some really intense death rattles, and there you have Necrium Blade immediately activating it. There are some really interesting combos you can pull with Necrium Blade as well. You could play Cobalt Illusionist with a Malygos in your hand and no other minions, swing the Necrium Blade, and then trigger your Cobalt Illusionist, pulling out Malygos. You backstab your Illusionist, and then after that, you play Eviscerate Eviscerate. That's a 28 damage combo. Just requires 6 cards, of which you've just set up the blade, and the other cards aren't that bad on their own. You could also try this combo. Have the Necrium Blade out, play Leroy, deal 6 damage with Leroy, play Carnivorous Cube on the Leroy, and then simply swing the blade in for 3 damage, and then trigger the death rattle on Cube, summoning 2 more Leroys. So that's a 3-card combo, which deals a total of 24 damage if you count the 6 damage from the blade, or 21 damage on the turn that it comes out. Wow, that's a lot of damage.
Tons of damage.
So those are the cards revealed today. Clearly, BOOMSDAY has a lot of interesting combinations possible, really emphasizing the science nature of this set.
The good and the bad times, we've been through them all. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around. The Inspira, Wheezing Seal, Gyarados Slowbro, gotta catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all.